Being perceived as the shop that is always offering the hottest new looks in the industry is lucrative to any shop in this competitive market. I'm Jenna with Stahls TV, and welcome to heat printing foil at the next level. For today's class, we're obviously going to be doing some heat printing foil at the Hotronix Fusion, and we're going to be showing you really unique ways to start incorporating this into your business so that you can increase your sales. Whether you're decorating for the school market, the retail market for custom t-shirts, or even the children's apparel market and boutiques, this is a perfect trend to start incorporating at your business if you aren't already. If you are and you're looking for new ways to apply foil, you've come to the right class. Before we get started, I just kind of want to point out a little bit about everything we're going to be going over today. If foil is brand new to you, then we are going to be going over that application. If you're not familiar with it, it can be a little confusing hearing people talking about it. So we're going to show you the step-by-step process in achieving a foil application. If you're already there and you are ready to advance from just your basic foil application, we're also going to be doing some mixed media looks. All right, so we can go ahead and go to the Hotronix Fusion and start our demonstrations. All right, and I want to point out also that if you're joining me in GoToWebinar and you have any questions throughout this broadcast, just be sure to comment in and we will answer those questions as we go. Also, if you are joining me on Facebook Live, be sure to like the broadcast and of course comment in your questions, and we'll be checking that frequently also. All right, so I'm using the Hotronix Fusion today, as usual, and I already have my 6x10 platen loaded in here. For the first application, as I mentioned, we're just going to be doing our basic foil application, and that is just going to be with our cadcut adhesive and foil. So if you're familiar with foil, but you haven't used it with your vinyl cutter or your heat press yet, you are probably doing it with the screen printing process. Now, I just want to point out that this is a more durable wash cycle. So this is going to last longer for your customers as opposed to applying it to a screen print. You'll typically get anywhere from 8 to 10 washes with a screen print is what a lot of customers and viewers have told me in the past. If you're already doing this with screen printing and you're achieving that, be sure to point that out if you're joining on Facebook and commenting kind of some stuff that you've experienced with it. As far as this goes, our cadcut adhesive is just like any other heat transfer vinyl, cut a vinyl cutter. Okay, so I'm going to show you the adhesive, and this is what was cut out on the vinyl cutter. Okay, so just like any other heat transfer vinyl, this was cut out on the Graphtex CE6000, but it works well with other cutters. Maybe you're not working with a cutter as a large of a format as the Graphtex CE6000. So this works just fine with the Silhouette Cameo, any GCC cutters, Cricut cutters, what have you. This will work just fine on. And we have all of those cut settings on the Stahls website if you want to check that out for whichever cutter you are using. Okay, so this is our adhesive. This is going to act as a heat activated glue. Okay, so as soon as I apply this, this is going to heat up, and this is what my foil is essentially going to be sticking to. Now, I want to point out before I apply this why I decided to use my 6x10 platen. This tote bag has a lot of compartments and extra hardware to it that I need to avoid getting in the way for a nice even pressure. One thing, whenever you are applying adhesive and foil, you always want to be very careful about what your time, temperature, and pressure is, because that is how you are going to get a very durable and high perceived look with foil. Okay, so I'm using the side of the tote bag that doesn't have a pocket. Okay, so I'm getting a nice flat surface, and then I'm also letting this zipper in here hang off the back of the platen so it's not in the way. Okay, so I'm going to apply my adhesive at a light pressure. Before I do that, I want to make sure that my pressure is exactly where it needs to be. So my press is reading at a 1, and with the Hotronix Fusion, it'll read anywhere between 1 and 3 so that I know that I'm at a nice light pressure. So I also did a quick preheat in case this bag were to be laundered. It'll release any moisture or wrinkles in there and keep the transfer from falling off in the wash cycle. Okay, so my application is going to be at 300 degrees, and I'm going to apply my adhesive for just 5 seconds. All right, and my heat press will go ahead and count that down for me so that I know I got exactly 5 seconds that I need for it to be durable. Okay, so I'm just going to remove my carrier. Adhesive is a hot peel, so you can remove that. And then I'm going to lay my foil on top. The color that I'm working with is copper, and I think it matches the camel brown in this faux leather here that we're seeing, so that's why we chose this color. And this would be a perfect application for any boutiques. Maybe you are a reseller for a business such as Viv and Lou or Wholesale Boutique, and this would be the perfect personalization that you could utilize this for. So my adhesive applies for anywhere between 8 to 10 seconds at a very firm pressure. All right, so my temperature, or my time was set at 15 seconds, so I'm just going to lift that up before it actually goes off, okay? And then I'm going to take this away from the platen because I want my foil to be a cold peel, so I'm going to wait for this to cool down. And it is going to get a little air on it, make sure it's completely cold to touch, so when I peel this away, it's going to stick perfectly to that adhesive. If I want to speed up this cool down process, all I have to do is leave it on a cold surface, and that will kind of push out all that heat that's in there. Okay, so I'm going to peel my foil back, and you can see how that two-step process gives us a very high perceived foil finish. Okay, it's very mirror-like, and it's a lot of what we are seeing in retail, and that is why something like this is so sought after. Okay, so when I hold this up to the light, you can see how bright that shines. All right, and there are many other ways that you can use foil, and we're going to get into that in the next couple demonstrations. And also be mixing it with some heat transfer vinyl that has been kind of hard to mix with just because of some loops that you have to go around. But we're going to show you how easy we can create that today. Before I get into the next demonstrations, I want to point out the wash durability of this. So foil paired with the adhesive is going to last up to 25 washes. Now that doesn't mean that anything is going to start peeling off. It just means it's going to lose its very shiny effect that it has. So it's going to look a little more dull and low luster as opposed to a mirror-like finish. Okay, so that's when it's going to start achieving or starting to diminish a little bit. After 25 washes, the more washes it goes through, it'll start to eventually flake off. Okay, so the adhesive itself isn't going to start peeling off, but you're just going to see little pin marks in the foil where it's starting to flake away. Now, if you are printing this for your customers, you want to make sure that they are following the care instructions. Now, if you order foil and adhesive from us, this will come with your order, so you don't have to kind of wonder what those care instructions are, and I'll also go over them now. So when you're putting it through the wash cycle, make sure that it is going through a cold water cycle in the washer. And then when you're done, we're not going to put it in the dryer, okay? We're going to actually recommend that we hang dry that, okay? And then, of course, just making sure that your customers follow those guidelines. Of course, we all know customers don't always want to follow the instructions, but just being able to recommend that so that they don't come back and say, you know, this didn't hold up and I'm not happy with this and what have you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into our next demonstration, and that is distressing foil. And we're doing a unique look here with a J America glitter tee that has been very popular. I've been doing a lot of trade shows this past year, and this is a popular blank that we're seeing a lot of customers really enjoying. We're actually printing these in the Stahls booth, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, make sure you print me one. So this is a really popular garment. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and switch out my 6x10 platen and drop in my 11x15. And we're just going to be printing the front of this oversized tee. All right, so I have my 11x15 loaded on there. I'm just going to lock it in place. Now, of course, since I switched out my platen, I want to be sure that I'm testing my pressure here. Okay, so anytime you swap out a platen on your interchangeable platen press, make sure you're just double checking your pressure so that it's not too heavy on the head of our heat print machine. Okay, so I'm going to load on my t-shirt here just by threading it so that I'm only working with the top surface of this t-shirt. Now I do have a seam here that I want to avoid because, again, as I mentioned earlier, we want to be sure that we are avoiding anything that can cause uneven pressure, because that's when you start to see foil not sticking or adhering correctly to that adhesive. So I'm just going to lay my pillow in here, and that's going to take care of that seam for me. So what this pillow is going to allow me to do is print over this seam, and the seam is going to sink down into there and leave these surfaces where I'm applying my transfer able to hit that press evenly. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick preheat since this is a shirt that can be laundered. Again, since I placed that pillow in there, I'm at a really high pressure, so I want to drop that down and make sure I'm reading anywhere between a 1 and a 3 when I'm applying my adhesive. Okay, so I have my adhesive transfer here, so I'm just going to place this down, making sure that the top of my design and the bottom piece of my design is on that pillow so that I have nice pressure. All right, so I have a little bit of room to work with here down at the bottom, so I'm just going to adjust this slightly so that my letters up top are not falling off. All right, and if your design at any point is larger than the platen or the pillow that I am using, there are different sizes for you to use. Okay, so I'm going to cover with my cover sheet, and I'm going to apply my adhesive. All right, and that's going to apply for just 3 to 5 seconds. And again, adhesive is a hot, so I'm going to go ahead and peel this back. Now, you may not be able to tell from the camera, but I can see from my angle where the adhesive did not adhere over here. So what I'm going to do is move this over and hit it again for just 3 to 5 seconds. I want to make sure that I'm getting a nice pressure over there so that my foil is adhering correctly. Okay, so I'm just going to press that again. This will not ruin the adhesive by being pressed again, so if you ever find that that happens with your designs, you can just reprint it or repress it and it'll work just fine. Right, so I have a good adhesion over there, so I can go ahead and peel this back. Right, and with this distressed finish, I'm going to be using a tone-on-tone distressed also with a silver. So I obviously wanted to give it a very distressed look, so by choosing black as my second color, and you'll see why, is going to give this a very crackled effect and distressed effect. So what I'm going to do with my first sheet is completely scrunch it up, all right? So this is going to create little lines and holes in this foil, and whatever line and punch through piece that I created by crinkling that up is directly going to transfer over to my adhesive. All right, and for this application, of course, we want to increase our pressure to a firm pressure. So I'm just going to turn my pressure knob twice, and I'm going to apply the foil for its full application, 300 degrees for 8 to 10 seconds. Right, and again, I want to let this foil cool completely before peeling. If you want a very distressed look and a very two-tone look, you can peel it early, and a lot of the foil won't adhere, and then whenever you do your second application, you can fill that in with the next piece. Now for this application, I'm going to wait for it to cool because I don't want too much of this silver to be released from the adhesive. So I can go ahead and peel this back. You can see all those lines that it created in there. And you can also see where I didn't have a firm pressure from my pillow being off a little bit underneath there. Okay, So just making sure that you're working with the right accessories to make sure you have a durable transfer is always going to be very lucrative. Okay, now I'm going to go back in with black because anytime this adhesive is exposed, you're going to risk that one customer that isn't going to follow the care instructions and that adhesive reactivating in the dryer. Okay, so anytime this adhesive gets heated up, it's going to be very tacky and sticky because, again, as I mentioned earlier, it works as a heat activated glue for something to stick to it. So I'm going to apply this over top of that. I'm actually going to take my pillow out this time just to make sure that this foil is going to fill in all those places where the last sheet missed. Okay, so I'm going to, again, my pressure one more time since I loaded, took out that pillow. Make sure I cover with my cover sheet. And now this black piece of foil is going to fill in all of those cracks and divots that were created from the scrunched foil. Okay, again, this applies 8 to 10 seconds. And I'm going to let it cool completely. I want it to be completely cold to touch so that it has enough time for that adhesive to cool down and become very durable, and then that foil will stick directly into those pieces that were still exposed. All right, so one takeaway from doing distressed foil is to make sure that you are filling in all of the exposed adhesive. Okay, you just don't want any chances of that reactivating and becoming very sticky. Okay, so now that this has cooled down, I can go ahead and peel this back, and you'll see the black foil is sticking in everywhere that my first hit missed. So even where I missed the pressure there from the pillow being a little off, even on this side. Okay, so I'm going to spin this around so that you can see it, and you can see what an awesome distressed effect that creates. Okay, so this is another sought after look. Even in retail, distressed effects are very popular. So being able to achieve that with a foil finish is even going to make that more popular to the consumer's eye. Okay. All right, so for our next application, we're going to show you another way that you can mix up a foil application very easily by just cutting adhesive and using two colors, similarly like what we did with the distressed, but laying it out specifically on the adhesive so that it creates a fun pattern. All right, and we're also going to be heat printing this to a performance garment. Okay, so this is a 100% polyester fabric, and it is a sports bra from Boxercraft. So I'm going to use my 11 by 15 here, and also my heat printing pillow since I'm working with some seams. So I'm just gonna go ahead and thread my sports bra onto my 11 by 15. Now, if this was a smaller sports bra, of course, I would want to go with a platen that is smaller because I wouldn't want this fabric to stretch. If this was stretched like this whenever I was applying my adhesive, it would come off being very crinkled whenever I take it away from the platen. Okay, so I want to avoid all of these thick seams up at the top around the collar and also that hemline down here. Okay. So with this application, first thing I need to do is apply my adhesive, of course. Okay, so I'm just going to place this exactly where I need it to be, and what I'm going to do also, since I see my adhesive kind of falling off towards the end of the pillow, I'm just going to rotate this to make it a little wider. Okay, so now I have more room to work with on my pillow. Okay. So I'm going to cover with my cover sheet, and we always recommend using a cover sheet just in case anything were to get up on that upper heating element. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I'm at a nice light pressure for my adhesive, and we'll apply that for 3 to 5 seconds. You can see the adhesive on there very well. It's shining up, it's showing up very dark there. So I can go ahead and peel this back. It even looks cool just like this with that tone-on-tone effect, but of course we don't want to leave that adhesive exposed, so we're going to need to cover that with foil. And the reason I'm peeling this off so slowly is because adhesive has a tendency to stretch whenever you're peeling the carrier very quickly. And since this is already a stretchy fabric, I want to be careful that I am not stretching my design because it will look distorted. So anytime you're working with stretchy vinyl, just be sure to peel it nice and slow. Okay, so for this application, I'm laying down strips of foil because I want to give it a two-tone effect that creates a striped pattern. Okay, so I'm just laying this across my adhesive, and now I still have adhesive exposed, so I want to make sure that that is covered, and I'm going to just lay my second sheet of foil on there. And now I can apply it for its full application. Right, again, this is going to be a firm pressure for 8 to 10 seconds. And that's going to apply 2 colors all at once. All right, so we're going to remove our cover sheet here and wait for our foil to cool completely so we can remove that pillow since it's holding a lot of heat in there. And we're just going to drop it off the platen and place it on a cold surface to kind of speed up that process. Now, whenever you're doing this step, if you're placing it on a cold surface to kind of speed up that cool down process, just make sure you're being very careful with the foil so that it doesn't start ripping. But I just want to show this up close to the cam so you can really see this nice tonal finish here. Okay, so we used orange and silver pixie dust for this application. And it really just broadens the horizon for being able to achieve different foil finishes. Okay, so this is one of many, and it is an easy step because you can get 2 colors in just one press of the foil. Okay, so keep in mind that people are also doing geometrical shapes and patterns on there that you can achieve by just kind of sporadically placing little pieces of foil on there. But your imagination is your only limitation, so be sure to come up with some new creative ideas on how you can achieve 2 color looks or 5 color looks, whatever limit you want to bring to yourself. Okay, so I am going to be using the 6x20 leg and sleeve platen, and we're going to be creating a little outfit to pair for add-on sales at your shop or business. Okay, so I have my 6x20 loaded on here. This is our leg and sleeve platen, and this is going to make it very easy to print my performance pants here. Okay, so this was also a Boxer Craft purchase, and what I'm going to do is just load my pants on here. And again, this is 100% polyester. It's a mix of polyester and spandex. So I just wanted to let you know the contents of the material that we're working with here. And I'm just going to be placing this print down the side of the leg here, okay? So other placements are on the back calf of pants, but of course I don't want this material to stretch too much so that my adhesive and foil aren't looking too distorted whenever I take it off of the platen. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that this is a nice thigh print. I want to make sure I'm at least 5 or so inches from that waistband. Okay, and I'm nice and close to the side here, so I'm not down the middle of my pant leg. I just want to make sure that I have all that adhesive off the carrier so I don't have random pieces of foil just sticking throughout. Okay, so I have a nice flat surface here. I'm only working with one side of this pant leg, so I know I'm going to be getting a nice even application for my adhesive, which is very lucrative to getting a nice foil print. Okay, so I'm going to use a cover sheet, of course, and I'm going to adjust my pressure to a light pressure. Okay, so 3 to 5 seconds for my adhesive. And my carrier can peel hot since adhesive is a hot peel. So I'm just going to grab my carrier and peel that back. All right, so I'm going to place my adhesive or my foil over top of my adhesive. And what I'm doing over here on the side of the press is making sure that I have it completely covered. Okay, so although this material is very translucent or transparent, I can still see some gloss and sheen from it on my garment here. So I'm kind of getting to the side so that I can see where the light is hitting it, so I know exactly where my start and end point are for my transfer. Okay, so I can kind of see some still exposed down here, so I'm just going to adjust that slightly. All right, I'm going to cover with my cover sheet and increase my application or my pressure up to a firm pressure by turning that knob twice. And your press will read anywhere between a 7 and a 9 for a firm pressure. Okay, so I will remove my cover sheet, and of course we want our foil to cool down. So we're going to take that off of the platen. And once it is cool to touch, I can go ahead and peel my foil back. Okay, so we have our FSH basketball custom design printed on the side of our performance pant. Okay, so this makes the perfect outfit for anyone that is doing any warm-up gear or maybe even selling this in some type of fundraiser for the school. So that's another niche that you can get into in the school market. Or some people will even do this job solely, is just creating apparel for fundraising. Okay, so that's where you would have a percent of commission for the students selling this apparel to you. All right, so always think of unique ways that you can pair items together for those additional sales. This is a way to do it with foil, and it seems to be very popular with that school market. So being able to incorporate that is even going to increase your sales and make you seem as a one-stop shop. Once they know that you have that type of finish that you can offer, they're going to come back to you for even more. All right, so for our next application, and we've had this one requested quite frequently, and that is being able to do a 2-color foil application with a contour gap, okay? Or not a gap, actually, just a contour. All right, so this is called the trapping method, where we're actually able to apply these in 2 separate applications as we would with any other heat transfer vinyl. So we're going to be applying adhesive twice and applying foil twice. Okay, so anytime we want a 2-color application and we're using heat transfer vinyl, we know that that's the process. So we're going to be doing that same process with foil. Okay, so I'm going to unload my 6x20 leg and sleeve platen and place my 11x15 platen back in. All right, so I always use the 11x15 platen anytime I'm working with ladies' garments because it has a very slim dimension to it. So anytime I'm working with slim garments for ladies, this is one that I want to work with, okay? So what I'm doing here is making sure that my thick seams are off the platen. All right, and I have a pocket down here, but they are falling off to the side, so I don't have to worry about that getting in the way. And I'm just going to do a quick preheat and test my pressure. So you may have caught me by now. I haven't been preheating and testing my pressure, but always be sure that you are doing that at home. All right, so I'm going to apply the first piece of my adhesive, and this is going to be my gap or my contour outline. All right, so this is the largest piece of my design, so this is the one I want to apply first. All right, so I'm going to press this for 3 to 5 seconds at a light pressure. Make sure I'm a little heavier than that on there. I want to be at least at a 1. And I can go ahead and peel that carrier back hot. And I'm going to go ahead and apply my foil. right? So I want the outline of my design to be in the navy foil. Navy foil is one of the new colors that we launched, so it may be new to you. All right, and of course, we want to be careful when placing our cover sheet down to make sure that that foil doesn't move under there and be off of our adhesive at all. Okay, so 8 to 10 seconds for our foil at a firm pressure. And I'm going to wait for that to cool. Okay, so just by taking it off the press, placing it on a cold surface, being careful that the foil doesn't start to fall off at that point and start tearing before it should. All right, so I can go ahead and peel that back, and my navy is applied. All right, so now, like I said, we're going to be doing a 2-color application with the foil here. So my next step is to go ahead and lay in my second color. All right, so of course, we need to apply our adhesive first. So we're going to place this right in, and with that trapping method, we're able to get this to line up perfectly. Okay, so just make sure that it is lined up inside, so it's a little bit hard to see just because the adhesive is clear. So just make sure that you're paying extra close attention to where it is all lined up. Okay, and if you don't do this often, it may be hard to do for the first time. All right, so from my angle, I can tell that my ribbon down here is not lining up correctly. So what I'm going to do is just trim that and place it separately from the letters, because I'm able to get each piece of this design separately lined up, but not whenever I'm doing it together. So I'm just going to trim those apart and lay in my letters, and then I'll lay in the ribbon separately. Okay, so this can happen if you are peeling your adhesive very quickly and it's stretching, so sometimes it will seem like it's not going to line up, but if you just play with it a little bit, you will get there. Okay, so now I can go ahead and lay my adhesive in. Great, so I'll apply this step. I want to make sure I'm adjusting my pressure. And as I'm applying this, my navy foil is getting hit with the press again. All right, so you don't have to worry about that doing any damage to it, but I will point out, however, it will start to give it a low luster finish. So anytime you apply your foil and you've hit it a second time, it will actually take away that mirror-like effect that it gives and make it more dull and low luster. Okay, so it's not going to be as shiny. So that navy foil on there is starting to look very matte. Right, so I'm going to go in with my pink foil and apply that, and that will be my last application. Right, so this process is achievable. It's just being able to create the correct artwork for it and also being able to maneuver it a little bit at the press, especially if you're not being careful of the way you are removing that adhesive carrier. Okay, so anytime you're working with a performance type fabric, such as this hoodie that we're heat pressing, you want to be sure that you are being very careful when removing that carrier so that it doesn't stretch out that bottom piece so that we have nice registration on there. Okay, so I can go ahead and peel this back. And now we have a contour navy and pink hoodie that was done in both 2-color foil. Okay, so it's done just like you would any other heat transfer vinyl, but you just have to apply the adhesive at separate times. Okay, so you don't want to lay just one piece of adhesive and lay the foil down separately. All right, so it's going to be a 4-step application to achieve something like this. All right, and for our next application, we're going to be doing something very unique and something that a lot of apparel decorators didn't know that was necessarily achievable. Okay, so if you use a Teflon cover sheet to protect your garments and your template or your designs from the upper heating element, you can actually cut designs out of that using a masking. Okay, so we sell a masking material that will come in yardage that looks like this, okay? And what we did was actually took a Teflon sheet and masked it to this clear backing on here. So we essentially gave it its carrier so that we could create a design in it, right? Then we went ahead and weeded out our little polka dots in here. Now what I'm going to do is lay this on top of my adhesive so I can again get a patterned foil without having to actually weed out a pattern inside my adhesive. All right, so it sounds a little confusing, but once you see it all done at the heat press, it'll start to really come to life for you. All right, so we're just doing this on a 100% cotton tank top here. And just, again, as you would any other garment, just thread that on there to make sure you're getting a nice flat surface. Make sure there's nothing on the garment that can cause anything to not adhere correctly. And we're going to test our pressure and do a quick preheat. Okay, so I can apply my adhesive now. All right, so the first step to getting a unique pattern with your Teflon template is to apply your adhesive first. All right, so I have a low scoop neckline for this tank, so I'm going to be applying fairly close to the collar so that it doesn't end up being a belly button print, okay? So I'm going to cover with my craft paper cover sheet and apply that for its recommended application. I can peel my carrier now, and after I peel this carrier, that is when I'm going to lay my Teflon sheet on top, okay? So my Teflon sheet with its little pattern in there is going to lay right over top of the helmet. So I do have text down here, but I just want this pattern to show up right on the helmet. So what I'm going to do is apply the piece of the foil that I want my polka dots to be. So I want them to be this silver champagne color, and I'm going to apply that, and I have some adhesive exposed down here, so I'm going to use my second color and cover that up with the foil that I would like that to be. Okay, so we're killing two birds with one stone here. Right, so I'm creating my polka dot pattern, and I'm also creating the foil print that I want to be on the text. All right, so I adjusted my pressure up to a firm pressure, and that's going to apply for 8 to 10 seconds, so I'm going to let that sit there for additional 3 seconds, and I'm going to wait for this to cool completely. So whenever I peel this foil away, I'm also going to peel away that Teflon sheet, and it's going to, you'll see that it created those little polka dots in there. Right, so of course, whenever I peel that Teflon sheet away, that's going to leave just random polka dots and some adhesive still exposed. So what I'll want to do is recover that with foil, and you'll see this whole process. We'll recover that with foil, and we'll be left with a two-tone helmet. Okay, so I have my polka dots inside my helmet with its pattern, and now I'm going to cover with the navy. And again, since I'm applying that silver champagne color, since I'm hitting that twice with the press, it's going to be more low luster. Okay, so going to cover that with the navy and place my cover sheet on top, making sure that my foil stays in place. So as I mentioned earlier, just be sure that your cover sheet is not moving that foil underneath. All right, and we're going to apply this at a firm pressure again for 8 to 10 seconds. All right, so this is just one unique way that you can create patterns within your foil application. All right, so being able to utilize that Teflon sheet to kind of block out where you don't want foil to adhere is going to allow you to achieve this. So that's the whole point of being able to do that. All right, and also, this doesn't just have to be done with a Teflon sheet. You can also do it with a craft paper cover sheet. Anything that you can put on that masking and cut on your vinyl cutter will work perfectly for this. Right, so now that that is cooled down, I can go ahead and peel that away. You can see where it only stuck to where adhesive was still exposed. You're also seeing something applied there, so that's where some leftover adhesive was left on that carrier. So just make sure that you're paying extra close attention to that so that you have a nice clean print. All right, so that is how you can create patterns using foil. All right, so just imagine showing that to an LH football mom and how crazy she would go over this. Maybe adding a number on the back in foil to represent her son's number that is playing. All right, but that is just one way that you can be very creative with foil. All right, and another way is by doing mixed media. Okay, so we've shown in the past how you can utilize patterns in your heat printing techniques and glitter, but we also want to show you how you should apply it with foil, okay, so that everything comes out correctly. So we always typically recommend applying foil first so that everything is applied correctly without the adhesive sticking to anything else. And that is what you really want to do when using it with patterns, okay? Because the patterns is a printable material and that foil will stick to it, all right? So anytime that you are pairing foil with another cadcut material, make sure that you are applying the foil first, right? Now, you'll see that we're going to mix that up after this application when we apply it with glitter flake, and I will show you how you can still get a very mirror-like finish without having to apply it first, okay? So that will be after we apply our patterns. All right, so we're going to be pairing foil again with that cadcut pattern material, and I'm applying patterns as our second application so that our foil does not stick to it. So my first application is going to be my adhesive and foil. And I'm going to start getting a little repetitive here because I keep repeating these foil instructions, but it's very, very something that I want to get stuck in your head, is to apply at a light pressure for 3 to 5 seconds for the adhesive at 300 degrees. And before you know it, it will become second nature to you because you'll be using this all the time and incorporating this into your designs that you won't even have to question what each application instruction is. All right, so I'm using a foil color called Bright Gold. And I want you to think in your mind what this application instruction is. All right, so of course, our first step is to increase our pressure by turning that knob. Okay, I'm already at 300 degrees. I know that it applies anywhere between 8 to 10 seconds. So I can go ahead and apply that. All right, so waiting for this to cool down. Always be sure to remember that our foil is a cold pill. You want to give that adhesive time to cool down, and it will allow the foil to bind with that heat activated glue. Okay, so we'll go ahead and peel that back. And you can see that it is very shiny and mirror-like. And now we're going to apply our patterns in there. Just going to line that up. And we're going to apply patterns for its application also. I can see that my V is a little off down at the bottom, so I'm just going to adjust that. Okay. All right, and my patterns is going to apply anywhere from 280 to 305 at a medium pressure for 5 to 10 seconds. So you'll see that my foil took on a very low luster finish, still very shiny nonetheless. And my patterns is a hot peel, so I can go ahead and peel that back, making sure that my foil doesn't start to stretch and be distorted. Okay. All right, and that is how you can pair foil with cadcut patterns. So you can really see all the dimension that the patterns in the foil gives. And I've been telling customers, even at trade shows, foil is practically like the new glitter flake. I mean, of course, it's not taking glitter flake's place because glitter flake is its own thing. It has that true glitter texture to it. But it's been so popular, almost the same as glitter flake was when it first came out. All right, so speaking of glitter flake, we're going to do our next application utilizing the glitter flake to give a really shiny and pop off the garment look. And we're going to be doing this with a knockout design. So if you've ever seen any artwork with a design punched through the middle, that is called a knockout design. We're going to show you how to achieve that effect using a pillow so that we can apply our foil as that knockout center. Okay, so we're going to need that to be our second application. Now, we've always recommended that foil is our first application, but if you use a pillow, you can apply it as a second application with glitter flake because it will not adhere to glitter flake if you're laying it directly over top of it, and you won't have to deal with uneven pressure whenever you're utilizing your pillow. All right, so I have my 11 by 15 on here. I can use that just fine with this application. So I'm doing a trendy 100% cotton tank here from Cavio. And it is a ladies fit, so that 11 by 15 is going to be perfect for getting the right application without stretching the garment. Okay, so I preheated and I'm going to apply my glitter flake. If you don't know already, glitter flake can be applied as low as 300 degrees now, so we won't have to worry about adjusting that temperature at all. All right. And just making sure I'm center here. I'm going to apply my glitter flake for the first application and making sure that I'm at a nice medium pressure. Okay, so this applies anywhere for 10 to 15 seconds at 300 degrees. And that time under there is going to give that adhesive enough dwell so that it is adhering to the fibers in the garment. So that's what makes glitter flake so durable. All right, so it's a hot peel, so I'm just going to go ahead and peel that back. And for my knockout piece, which is a gymnast, I can just go ahead and lay that in there with my adhesive. All right, so everything is placed in there. And of course, I need to put my pillow in there to apply my adhesive. Since it is directly right up against this glitter flake, it could easily cause uneven pressure. So I want to use my pillow to allow it to get a nice heavy pressure. Or not a heavy pressure because we're using adhesive, but a good pressure so that it is adhering correctly in all the right spots. All right, so I'm going to cover with my cover sheet, adjust my pressure to a light pressure. I need to adjust it even more because that pillow's in there. Increase it slightly so it's giving me at least a 1 on my screen here. And that's going to apply for 5 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds. Okay, so I can see where it was very close to that glitter flake, where it was still able to adhere in there. All right, so because I used that pillow, it allowed me to get a nice pressure there, but I do want to be careful that this isn't stretching and distorting because it will look like my registration was off. Okay, now I'm going to go in with my foil as essentially my third application now, and that's going to adhere right into that open spot, which is my knockout design. Okay, so I'll cover with my cover sheet. Of course, we want to protect our garment for anything that could be up on that upper heating element, and now I want to make sure I'm at a nice firm pressure. This is going to apply anywhere from 8 to 10 seconds at 300 degrees. All right, so I'm going to take this off my platen, remove my pillow, and just hold this on a cold surface for a few seconds to release all of that heat that is still left in the garment. And when my foil is cool to touch, I can go ahead and peel that back. Okay, so as you can see, that is an awesome finish by being able to utilize foil in a knockout design and pair it with glitter flake to give it a really pop off the garment look. All right, so that was our last application of the day. I have managed to go past my time limit here, but I want to go over some best practices. As I mentioned earlier, this video is recorded, so if you do have to duck out now, that's fine, but this will all be on the Stahls website if you do want to catch it later. Okay, so some of the best practices, if you are pairing it with another material, you want to use foil first. All right, unless you are using heat printing pillows that will still allow you to get a nice even pressure, then you can look at being able to apply that as the second application, all right, as you just saw me do. So whenever I apply foil for the first application, if I'm mixing it with another material, I'm going to apply that second HTV, and that foil is going to start to look like a low luster finish. So just pairing the foil that I did on the patterns with the foil that I did with the glitter flake. They both have different sheens to them because one was pressed last and one was pressed first. Okay, so also know your heat transfer vinyl. So this is when it comes to whether you're going to mix foil with patterns or whether you're going to mix it with glitter flake. All right, so we know that foil is most definitely going to stick on the patterns if I were to lay a whole sheet over my entire design. That pattern is going to be completely covered. Now, if you're wondering if you can use pattern heat transfer vinyl to apply your foil, it's not going to be as durable as the adhesive, so just keep that in mind. All right, so then we know that if I apply my foil to the glitter flake, the foil is not going to directly adhere and completely cover that glitter flake, okay? So because glitter flake is a nice textured vinyl, has a true glitter texture, that adhesive is not going to be able to stick to it. It's like trying to stick a piece of foil to a t-shirt without adhesive or a screen print being there, okay? Also, keep your carrier away from the foil. You may have heard me trying to rip foil away from adhesive earlier, and it completely distorted the carrier that the foil is actually laminated to. Also, if you were to stick the carrier to the back side of the foil, this entire foil piece is going to peel off on that carrier and ruin a graphic that you have cut out of your adhesive. All right, so just be cautious that you're not placing those two things too close together. Very hard to do, especially if you're applying them. All right, and then whenever you're pairing with glitter HTV, of course, we did go over that already. And then pay attention to pressure. That's one thing I noted a lot in this class, okay? So making sure that you're using a light pressure when you're applying the adhesive and a heavy pressure when you are applying foil. Those are the recommended applications to being able to achieve a very high-end and high-perceived, valued foil finish, okay? So making sure that you are abiding all of those instructions and following those rules, you will be sure to achieve any of the looks that we did today with ease, all right? So if anyone is experiencing, if you're in the Stahls TV Facebook group that is called Heat Press for Profit, we've had some people share with us that they're experiencing maybe some pinholes showing up in their adhesive, or maybe it's just not applying correctly. So you want to also take into consideration your garment choice. All right, so if I'm applying foil to a textured fabric that is not completely smooth and flat, I'm going to risk pieces of foil not adhering correctly. Okay, so that's a pressure issue. If you're working with a textured fabric, foil may not adhere in all the right areas that it is supposed to, okay? So just making sure you're following all of the ins and outs of the applications for foil, you'll be sure to end up with a great piece to give to your customers. All right, so if you have any questions, do we have any in GoToWebinar, Joe?
There's just really the one question, well, two questions, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is the Teflon pattern sheet reusable?
Yes, so that is a reusable cover sheet. That's actually what we call it, okay? So if you are using a Teflon sheet to create patterns in, you can use that over and over and over again, do all the wear and tear you want to it until you just can't use it anymore. Right, and the next question?
What about applying the foil on ceramic mugs or stainless steel travel mugs?
Okay, so that is a different application in itself. They may use the same foil, but they're most likely using a different adhesive that will apply in a completely different way, okay? So that's a different application. I do know what you're talking about because I have seen it, but it's not something that we have tested at Stahls TV. So maybe just doing a little bit of research or talking to someone that you know is doing it and asking them how they're achieving that, of course, will help you to be able to achieve that as well.
And just one more that just came in. It's, if you get small bits of adhesive outside of the graphic area, is there a way to get that off of the garment?
There is a way to get bits of adhesive if it is outside, and that is called a vinyl remover. It's something that Stahls sells on the website. So if you go there, you'll be able to find it there, and it will actually remove that adhesive from there. All right, so it's not something that I recommend putting on everything because you chance maybe some color distortion or maybe some fading where it's applied, because it is a very strong chemical to get the adhesive to unbind from that fabric, okay? But it is achievable, it is possible, it's a little bit of work, but of course, we'll do almost anything to save a garment, right? So just be sure to check out the Stahls website. All right, looks like that's all of our questions. Thank you so much for joining me today. Be sure to join us next week for a live class with Courtney Kibitza. I'm Jenna with Stahls TV. Thanks again.